She's taking the challenge?
No, she's trying to make sure that I'm recording, but she's off. If I get back and this is all wrong, I'm coming after you. Now, this one's a little bit more difficult because it's not as easily, stated as being squared. But as long as you can write this as something squared minus something else squared, then we're going to be in good shape. How could you rewrite x to the 10th as what squared?
X to the 5th.
As x to the 5th, because remember, powers to powers, you'd multiply. And think about it, if you cut x to the 10th in half based on multiplication, you'd have 5 x's and 5 x's on the other side, right? How could you cut 49 in half based on multiplication? 7 and 7. What about the y's? So do you have something that's set up in that form, a squared minus b squared? It's a squared minus b squared, right? So then how does it factor?
X to the 5th minus 7y3rd.
Right, you got x to the 5th plus 7y to the 3rd, and then what? I know what you said. You said minus, I said plus. I go plus and then minus. Lead off with the positive, right?
Yep.
It's like whenever you're dating somebody. You always lead with the positive, and once you've got them hooked, then you can let them into your not so positive side. Oh, you didn't realize that I have these nasty habits? Sorry, babe. I mean, you're in it for the long haul now.
What if it doesn't square?
If it's not a square, well, then we'll have to find other ways of taking care of it. And sometimes we have things that just don't. Like if I were to write x squared minus 5, is that a difference of squares? No. There's no way for us to factor this using integer values.
Right.
So the only thing you could say here is that this guy is prime. There's no way to break this guy up. There's not even a common factor to take out. You can't do two sets of parentheses. It's not going to work out.
Not
It's
even
prime.
x plus 1 times x minus 5.
You're going to end up with a middle term if you do that.
Really?
You'll end up with a middle term if you do that. If you're not sure, if you think you have a way this guy factors, write it out and then multiply it out, and you got to find out that it doesn't work. The only way you could factor this guy is something that does not involve integers. And we'll save that for 0310. Let's try this one. 36x to the 4th minus 100y squared. Can anybody tell me the wrong answer? 25 is the wrong answer. Okay. Can we give? I'm looking for the right wrong answer. Who wants to give me an answer here?
It's 6x squared.
6x squared plus 10y. Okay, good. That is the wrong answer I was looking for. Now, what you've failed to do is something that I've stressed on almost every problem. What have I told you to do for every problem?
On the common factor.
Look for the common factor. Is there a common factor here? 4, right? Maybe we should take out that common factor of 4 first. If I do that, then I'm going to have 9x to the 4th, and then what? Minus 25y squared. Now, I took out that 4, but there's still more work to be done, right? How do I finish factoring this guy?
3x.
Because this is the difference, and these guys are squares. So what do you get?
5y.
3x squared plus 5y, and then what?
5y. 3x squared minus
3x squared minus 5y. What do you guys think?
That's much easier than what you read it earlier.
It seems easier, doesn't it? Let's see if I can make you regret saying those words. How about x to the 4th minus 81?
Hold on. Okay. I'm sorry.
Sure, questions?
Okay, so basically, two numbers there.
You have a common factor.
Thank you. Have a common factor of 4. So you go ahead and pull 4 out of that.
Right, because let me tell you what's going to happen if you don't. if you give me the answer that I expect you to give me, which is 6x squared plus and minus 10y,
You're still gonna have to.
if you look at 6x squared plus 10y, there's a common factor of 2 there. There's a common factor of 2 in the other guy. And if you don't pull out those common factors, you will not have completely factored the polynomial and you lose points.
It's squared plus 9, squared minus 9.
Answer with authority. Do not answer
Told
and
you
end with
that's
a.
right.
You ended with a question.
Minus 9.
X squared plus 9 times x squared minus 9. There's no question at the end of my statement. It just is. So we're done, right? Box this. I wish you hadn't boxed that because I want you to look at this right here.
9 can be
X squared minus 9 can go further, can it not?
X plus 8.
What?
X plus 3.
X plus 3 and x minus 3, right? What about this guy right here?
Plus 3.
No, this is the sum of squares, right? I told you not to haggis.
Jeez, I leave like 2 minutes and I'm lost.
Yeah.
x plus
Remember, this is the
3,
sum of
x
squares, and we
plus
said
3.
before what? Don't factor. It doesn't factor. I said don't haggis.
Oh.
So it'll be 9 X.
So no haggis. X squared plus 9, but this guy right here becomes what? X plus 3, x minus 3. So sometimes after you do one of these forms.
Do we have to do that?
No, you can totally leave it like this and not get full credit.
Not get, really?
When the instructions say factor completely, you factor until you can't go any further. I can't break down x minus 3 or x plus 3 any further. X squared plus 9, even though he has a square, he will not factor, he will not break down using real numbers.
No lo hagas.
Because if you try to factor that out, you're gonna come up with a middle term, another term. Is that what you
Right, the only way this guy can factor is using imaginary numbers, so we're not talking about that just yet. I'll see you guys in 0310. Now I want to do one last one that combines what we're talking about now and what we talked about yesterday. Let's try 4x to the third minus 5x squared minus 36x plus 45. After you look for a greatest common factor, of which there's not one, just the number 1. How many terms do we have? And what do we try to do when there are 4 terms? Factor by grouping. So if I look at this first group right here, what's the common factor?
X squared.
Factor it out, and what do you have?
4x minus 5.
In the second group, you lead with a negative, so what's the common factor?
6.
-9,
It's a negative 9.
4x plus 5,
Is that answering with authority?
Plus 5.
4x plus 5.
4x plus 5 is wrong.
Minus.
It's minus 5. No, why is it minus and not plus?
Sorry, it's positive.
It's a negative times a negative.
I have to make sure the negative times this gives me back that positive.
WYS.
Yeah, WYS, watch your signs. Now, when I finish this, 4x minus 5, I like to factor out front, and what's the other factor?
X squared
X
minus
squared
9.
minus 9, which can be x minus 3, x plus 3, x minus 3.
Right, you can say minus 3 and plus 3 if you want to, but that is not how I roll. I'm going to factor this as x plus 3 and x minus 3. Do you all agree with that? So not only do we have factoring by grouping, but then we also have the difference of squares. So we can combine these guys. Right?
So every time it's a negative, you do that? So whenever it's a...
You can't always do that, because look at the example we had up here. X squared minus 5 was prime, because that was not a square. But if it's a difference of 2 squares, you do have to finish factoring that. Had this been a positive, a plus,
What about the x squared plus 9 on top?
this is a sum of squares. We told you that we do not factor the sum of squares. It's that big difference between having a sum or a difference. A difference of squares you can factor. A sum of squares right now we can't touch.